On this edition of Southern Newsweek, Timaru is left reeling as 5 teens are killed in a single vehicle crash. A historic causeway is opened in a Dunedin mall, and Hiroshima Day is remembered across the world, with a call for peace in Dunedin. Kia ora, I'm Melissa Barton. Funerals have begun for 5 teenage boys killed in a car crash in Timaru on Saturday night. Meanwhile, the South Canterbury City and senior police are reeling, while friends have been paying their respects at the accident site.
Dani Black was amongst those paying their respects to the 5 teens who lost their lives when the Nissan Bluebird they were passengers in hit this pole with enough force to rip the car in half on Saturday night. Black says it still seems unreal, but she needed to visit the site.
Peace of mind, I guess. I didn't believe it yesterday. I thought it was all a big prank because Joey was very out there, and so I just thought it was a big bad prank, but it's not. I wish it was.
The families of the young men who lost their lives have begun announcing funeral plans. 15-year-old Andrew Goodger is to be farewelled on Thursday. Javani Drummond's funeral is set to be on Friday, while Nico Hill's funeral is still to be finalised. Dani Black was friends with Javani Drummond and Joseph Joey McCarthy. She says Joey had a generous spirit.
He would go above and beyond for his friends. He had a really big heart, and he did love a lot of people. He was wonderful.
Police Aoraki Area Commander Inspector Dave Gaskin says it's too early to say if the driver will be charged, but says the after effects of horrific events like this will be with the community and especially whānau for many years to come.
Any crash where someone loses a life is a tragedy, and I think the tragedy goes to the family forever. Obviously 5 young boys at that age losing life is terrible. Unfortunately, young people in vehicles do silly things. Sometimes the consequences are serious.
He says from observations at the scene, he suspects both speed and alcohol were factors. The driver, 19-year-old Tyrese Fleming, was on a restricted licence and was the only person to survive the smash. In Timaru, the South Today.
A historic wooden causeway dating back to about 1850 has been unveiled in Dunedin's Wall Street Mall. It might not look like much, but the parlour sticks gives an insight into what the early settlers faced, armed with not much more than an axe to build their houses.
Finally unveiled under a layer of strengthened glass, this wooden causeway, dating back to about 170 years ago, tells the story of some of the very first European settlers who only had a few tools, such as axes, to carve out a township in what was to become Dunedin City.
So they're going up onto the hillside behind us here, cutting timber and carrying it down to where the town was growing down on the foreshore. But of course, it's a quagmire. They're walking across this boggy area, you'd be up to your waist in mud. So they're working hard, they're clearing bush, they're cutting timber to build, and they're also using some of the waste timber that they're cutting to build this pathway. So it's part of that whole story of how the first settlers basically carved a new life out of the landscape here at the head of the harbour.
Attending last night's unveiling was Peter Chin, who was the mayor of the city when the wooden sticks were first discovered by archaeologists leading up to the building of Wall Street Mall in 2008. He says he doesn't mind having to wait 13 years for the original wood to finally go on display to the public.
All these things take time, but it doesn't matter because it didn't have to be done yesterday. As long as it was done properly, and I think it has been done properly and it's going to be there forever.
Archaeologist Peter Pecci says the dig on the empty site before the mall was built unveiled a number of other treasures, some of which are now at the Toitu Otago Settlers Museum.
There's a lot of archaeological material here dating to all sorts of periods of Dunedin's history. We found material from the gold rush period, the 1860s. We found a whole load of miners' candle holders, which would have been there for the gold miners heading up to Central Otago. We found a little badge from the 1864 All England Cricket 11, the first international cricket team to tour New Zealand.
Peachy says it took a long time to get the preservation of the timbers done right, and as plans for the display kept changing, some new saw cuts were added to some pieces of wood. But he's pleased that it now stands as a testament to some of the hard work that went in to make Dunedin a city.
Seeing the timbers there, that was one of the best paths they would have had in all of Dunedin at the time. So it's the ability to appreciate how much the place has changed, the effort that people put into making a new home, just the stories it can tell about human endeavour, how people learnt about and adapted to this new place on completely the other side of the world from where they come from.
The project is estimated to have cost about $400,000. In Dunedin, the South Today.
About a year on from a fire at St Paul's Cathedral, the multi-million-dollar rebuild is underway. The Very Reverend Dr. Tony Curtis had an unwelcome early phone call on August the 11th last year, when he was told the iconic church he's been dean of was ablaze.
At 3:30 a.m. on August the 11th last year, fire crews were called to St Paul's Cathedral at the top of the Octagon. Dean of Dunedin, the Very Reverend Tony Curtis, was at the scene early on. He says a fair bit of progress has been made a year down the track.
Well, it's been a long, hard job. Not beat about the bush. It's taken quite some time for us to get everything properly made safe. We've had discussions with the insurers. We've had to demolish quite a lot of the roof of the new part of the building, the apse, which we're standing in now.
He says it's been a pretty challenging year, with a lot of work completed so far, but so much more to do. Father Curtis, who has a background in large project management in the UK prior to becoming ordained, is thankful the church was insured.
We are probably looking at 7 figures of insurance work to complete all that, putting the roof back together and repairing a lot of the damage in the building. But we're also going to take the opportunity that has been brought by what wasn't a great event, what wasn't something I would have looked for, but we're hoping to sort of rise from the ashes and produce something that's going to be better for our worshipping community and better for the people of Dunedin as well.
The project cost is estimated to be about $4 million to repair and significantly upgrade many areas of the historic building, which took 4 years to build, work beginning in 1915. The Dean of Dunedin says the church is consulting with many groups to make the cathedral a welcoming environment for all peoples.
A cathedral really exists for the city that it sits in, and our job is to do the very best we can to welcome and be there for and pray for the people of God in Otago and Southland. That's what we've always been here for, and we hope we'll be able to do it even better in the future.
Father Curtis says they're thankful to some benefactors who've bequeathed funds for rainy day projects like this. In February 2019, St Paul's marked 100 years of consecration. In Dunedin, the South Today.
76 years ago this month, an atomic weapon was first used in the theatre of war, when the US Air Force dropped a bomb containing enriched uranium on Hiroshima. The blast reportedly killed 70,000 people instantly, with more than 150,000 dying of their injuries by the end of 1945. A group of people gathered at Dunedin's Peace Pole to remember recently.
A solitary bell chimes at Dunedin's Peace Pole in the late morning as those gathered remember the many thousands of people who died when an atomic bomb was first used in war in 1945.
So we're here to remember the victims and to recommit ourselves to working to eliminate nuclear weapons from the world.
It's 76 years from one of the events which brought World War II to a brutal close, when a nuclear weapon was dropped, killing 70,000 people instantly. Professor Richard Jackson says, as well as remembering those who lost their lives, today's events also serve to educate future generations.
It's also an opportunity to inspire and educate a new generation of people so that they will take up the mantle of working to eliminate nuclear weapons. And it's also a way of sort of recommitting ourselves and signalling to everyone who's watching and to the rest of the world that we are committed to peace and we are committed to trying to rid the world of these inhuman weapons.
Members of the University of Otago drumming group Otaiko opened today's proceedings as the crowd at the peace poll grew. Professor Jackson says while they're remembering the events of 7 decades ago, the threat of nuclear weaponry is still current today.
So the nuclear arms race in a way is still continuing, and you know, the world is probably more at risk of nuclear weapons now than it was a few years ago because there are increased tensions, there are growing conflicts.
As well as Professor Jackson, Timothy Bramley stunned the crowd with a sung karakia before Emily Deans spoke on behalf of the Quakers. Poets Stephanie Dufresne and Sophie Wilson read before soprano Courtney Hickmont's voice cut across the traffic noise. 76 years ago, and by the end of 1945, 166,000 people, many of them thought to be Korean slaves, lost their lives to radiation and other injuries. And they were remembered again today. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Still to come on this edition of Southern Newsweek, the Otago Regional Council is to get to the bottom of groundwater issues, and farmers, their dogs and a bunch of toey sheep gathered near gore testing skills and patience. So see you after the break. Welcome back. Drilling crews are busy across Dunedin, helping the Otago Regional Council better understand the complexities of groundwater flowing under the city. The information will help scientists understand how to be better prepared for future events, including sea level rise.
People in low-lying areas around Dunedin might spot a drilling rig crew in action over the next few weeks. Otago Regional Council Natural Hazards Analyst Dr Sharon Hornblow says the crew are both collecting core samples and putting in groundwater measuring devices.
We're installing some special pipe which is called a piezometer, and that's going to allow us to put down a data logger that will capture the depth and the pressure of the groundwater that's under South Dunedin at this point. And we're doing it at several areas, some of them next to each other with a deep hole and a shallow hole, so that we can measure how the groundwater connects between those two zones.
The project is in collaboration with the Dunedin City Council, EQC and GNS Science, and it will look at the low-lying reclaimed areas spanning from Tomahawk to the university, but will predominantly investigate flood-prone South Dunedin.
We're focusing on all the low-lying areas that are like sort of 2 metres or less above sea level. So those areas that if there is going to be heightened sea level, heightened groundwater, then this will be the first affected.
The result will create what Hornblow describes as a world-class network of about 36 groundwater measuring sites, allowing scientists to get a better understanding of subterranean water.
Really having a look at the complexity of how groundwater behaves, not just at those points, responding to rainfall or tides at those points, but seeing groundwater as a surface and understanding the shallow groundwater surface and also the behaviour of deeper groundwater flows that might be connected with sea and with water coming off the hills.
The drilling project across Dunedin is expected to take about 2 weeks. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Sheepdogs and their shepherds from across the South Island got a chance to show off their skills at Waiumu. The 3-day Southern Indoor Charity Dog Trail is held each year as a fundraiser for the Hospice Southland.
It may have not looked busy when we turned up with our cameras on Sunday, but this year's Southern Indoor Charity Dog Trials attracted over 100 entries from as far away as Blenheim. The challenge was for a shepherd and their dog to guide 3 ewe hoggets over a course and into a sheep pen. Organiser Mike Joyce says the event was going well, with almost 140 competitors to be judged on their skills over 3 days.
It's all going good. We're going to get to about run number 110 tonight. We'll have about 15 runs tomorrow, and we'll move into the final 7 in the afternoon after a barbecue lunch.
Now in its 6th year, the challenge is held indoors at the Southern Field Days Waimumu site near Gore, using 3 hoggets at a time taken from a flock already used to be worked by dogs. The trials raise funds for Hospice Southland, with manager Suzanne Prentice very pleased with the fundraiser.
We're so appreciative of being here. If you haven't been, make sure you come next year. You'll thoroughly enjoy it.
The event was set to finish this afternoon, with 7 finalists vying to win top spot. In Waimumu, the South Today.
Health and safety rules require PPE gear to be changed frequently, with some going to the landfill before it's worn out. But a new scheme plans to stop that as 2 Dunedin organisations are joining forces to reduce waste.
Throughout the years, many businesses have sent used workplace protective equipment to a landfill when it's no longer fit for purpose, despite items having plenty of wear and tear left in them.
So Port Otago came to us. Jamie, their sustainability manager, was very determined to find a solution. So we put our heads together and worked out how we could de-logo or cover up logos on their gear to then upcycle to our staff here at Cargill's.
Cargill Enterprises Sales and Business Development Manager Blair Kippenberger says, after a discussion with Port Otago, the 2 organisations have come up with a solution which means PPE can be given a new lease of life. But he says some of the work is quite tricky.
Some of the logos are fairly well embroidered, so we spent some time unpicking those, but they were pretty hard to unpick. So we either cover them up with a similar sort of silver strip, or we can remove some logos by heat transfer.
Kippenberger says the scheme is being trialled as they upcycle about 100 pairs of overalls and jackets.
Cargill's waste minimisation is a big part of what we do. We have an entire department for e-waste, so electronic waste.
Cargill's Enterprises in South Dunedin employs more than 80 people with some level of disability, ranging in age from school leavers through to retirees. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Weather forecasters' prediction of snow to about 200 metres on Sunday proved accurate for Dunedin. The suburb of Halfway Bush received a solid dusting, although none settled at sea level.
Snow started falling in Queenstown on Sunday night, and by the time Dunedin residents woke up on Monday morning, there was reasonably thick snow on cars and footpaths in the upper suburbs of the city. Halfway Bush resident Jenny Ferris makes a point of clearing her driveway of snow, having learned the hard way in previous years that snow can turn into hard ice if it gets the chance to refreeze.
To get my car out, because what happens, if it freezes tonight, the snow will turn to ice, and there's no way I can get down. That corner is the worst corner.
The snowfall is the heaviest Dunedin has seen so far this year, but Ferris says it seems to be noticeably less than what she remembers from earlier years.
It's not as bad now as what it was 20 years ago or something, so it is changing, but you get used to it.
Further up on 3 Mile Hill, Errol Hanna and his partner Michelle and 4-year-old son Harley were enjoying the snow, having driven up the hill especially to make a snowman.
I'm a snow fanatic, I love it. I just love the way itself, it just brings the happiness out in people.
Snow fell much more heavily in Canterbury, with some Christchurch locals travelling up to the Port Hills to experience the cold white stuff close at hand. Several motorists were reported stranded around Arthur's Pass, having to be taken in by locals. Across the regions, the South Today.
Still to come on Southern Newsweek, Dunedin midwives have taken the lead on nationwide rolling strikes, and Rangiora celebrates a brand new stadium. So catch this and more after the break. Thanks for staying with us. Midwives walked off the job on Monday morning in a bid to deliver a strong health message about their pay and work conditions. Members of the Midwifery Employee Representation and Advisory Service held an 8-hour strike from 11 a.m. as part of a nationwide week of action.
Midwives at Dunedin Public Hospital say they're at breaking point as the numbers of them working at DPH are at emergency levels. Kylie Fraser has been a midwife for nearly 20 years and says it's never been this bad.
When I first got into midwifery, there was heaps of midwives. In fact, when I first got in, it was really hard to get a job at the hospital, and there was a big struggle to get a full caseload because there was so many LMCs. So it was a fantastic low-ish pressure job. And over the last 18 years, the numbers have dwindled so significantly that now there's about 13 or 14 LMCs in the community, and we are now about 50% staffed with registered nurses, which is fantastic. They've filled the gaps in the hospital.
The union looking after midwives says there's a national shortage of lead maternity carers. Midwives say their priority is the health of expectant mothers and in utero babies, so regular scheduled appointments, treatments and clinics continued today. Kylie Fraser says she loves her work, but feels it's unsustainable as there's a desperate shortage of carers.
But we need midwives. We need midwives to help mothers and babies in our unit. So it's really, really devastating to be a passionate midwife and not be able to give the care that you think that women and babies, or pregnant people and babies, deserve.
She says the profession has become incredibly stressful and the pay doesn't reflect the life and death decisions which need to be made in many situations. Today's action is part of a nationwide week of rolling stoppages, culminating with a rally at Parliament on Thursday. In Dunedin, the South Today.
The moving of a bus stop by just a few metres at the busy garden shopping area in North Dunedin is creating confusion for some. It's taking some regular visitors a while to learn that the bus stop and a former P30 car parking area have been swapped over.
Confusion has reigned at this North Dunedin bus stop after the Dunedin City Council shifted the bus stop markings and much later on the signs, swapping a P30 area for a bus stop and changing a former bus stop into a P30. Opaho resident Jamin Halberstadt was a regular user of the former P30 while shopping at the Gardens Corner.
We just live up in Opaho, so we come to the bagel place out every day. So I just usually pull up and then grab a couple fresh bagels and then pull away.
It was not until parking there this morning that he learned that the P30 and bus stop have been swapped over.
It's just that, I didn't even notice, but the guy inside said just watch out because the bus stop and the parking areas have been swapped around. So I don't know. I don't think it was like this yesterday, but I don't know. I don't come literally every day, so I might have missed it.
The Dunedin Tramways Union says the new bus stop does not allow bus drivers to get close to the curb for older passengers, and is also concerns about hitting the shop veranda above. In Dunedin, the South Today.
A new sports stadium was opened in Rangiora over the weekend. Those behind the project say the $28 million facility will serve the community well, not just in sports, but also health and well-being.
It's our pleasure to declare the main power stadium officially open.
Waimakariri Mayor Dan Gordon cuts the ribbon to open Rangiora's new main power stadium. North Canterbury Sport and Recreation Trust CEO Michael Sharp says the $28 million facility will be able to serve community members of all ages.
It's going to be really a hub from 2-year-olds all the way through to over 90-year-olds, not only just in sport, from grassroots through to national sports people, through to fitness and well-being and health.
The building has been a good 20 years in the planning, having been delayed by the devastating earthquakes of 10 years ago. With cafes, fitness gyms and meeting rooms, the facility will hopefully become a mainstay of the Waimakariri community.
With the smoothie bar and all of that, it's a great place to actually come as well. And with all the other adjoining sports, the tennis, the hockey, the cricket just down the road, the football across the road. It's a real hub of North Canterbury, not just Rangiora.
The court areas are marked out for basketball, netball, volleyball, korfball, futsal and badminton. And Sharp is keen to point out the range of sports and health and wellbeing services the Main Power Stadium can provide to the community are second to none.
Probably there is other down in Southland and all of that, parts, so larger ones like that, but for its size, all of the add-ons, I call it, that really complements to a multi-sport complex. There's no other facility like this one.
The new facility is nestled in a growing sports hub, including the Rangiora Showgrounds, a cricket ground, hockey turf, football grounds and a dozen tennis courts that are still under construction. In Rangiora, the South Today.
And that wraps up this edition of Southern Newsweek. For the latest news from the Southern region, head online to www.odt.co.nz and follow Channel 39 on YouTube and Facebook. Ka kite anō.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.